welcome and a good afternoon to everyone present. It's a pleasure to welcome you to the roundtable discussion on the role of small modular reactors to enhance India's clean renewable energy capacity by 2047. My name is Nidhi Tambe and I work as a researcher at EECC PIC. I am excited to introduce to you Vice Admiral Deshpande as the chair of the event. Vice Admiral Deshpande commissioned in the Indian Navy at 1980. He also served in the Navy for close to around 40 years. During his illustrious career, he was also part of Western Fleet staff during Operation Prakaram. He served at various levels at Naval Headquarters in Delhi, Western Naval Command, Naval Dockyards at Mumbai and Vizag, and also commanded the Navy's premier training base at INS Shivaji, Lonavala. He headed the prestigious Scorpene submarine program and was the Director General of Naval Projects at Visakhapatnam. And he further headed the Navy's ship and submarine building and acquisition programs both in India and abroad. Vice Admiral was awarded Atithi Vishishta Seva Medal, the Vishishta Seva Medal and the Chief of Naval Staff Commendations on 3 occasions. He is currently pursuing the government's Make in India initiative in the marine field, specifically in building of fleet support ships at HSL Visakhapatnam. He is also deeply involved in the induction of AI and robotics in the defense sector. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation, and we all look forward to hear your thoughts. I will quickly take you all through the event flow. The background and the welcoming remarks will be said by our Professor Amitav Malik. Initial remarks for the chairperson will be given by Vice Admiral D. Deshpande. Presentation on SMR will be provided by Sayukta, who is a EECC researcher. Keynote talk will be provided by Dr. Suresh Gangotra, Senior Technical Advisor to Chairman AEC. Thoughts on SMR technology will be shared by Sri Madhukar Kotwal sir, who is a PIC member and ex-L&T director. Discussions on the subject matter will be moderated by Mr. Mahesh Devdhar. Remarks and the final remarks will be provided by Vice Admiral D. Deshpande.
Hello. He is not well today. He is recovering from dental surgery. So I have invited Ravi Pandit, Chairman of the KPIT, to give the remarks, and only after that the chair will give the remarks.
Sure.
All right. So let me welcome all. I am Amitav Malik, trustee of PIC and also head of the EECC, what is called is the Energy, Environment and Climate Change. I am basically a physics person, specialist in laser, then became specialist in strategic technology, including nuclear. Then went to Washington, D.C. as a defense advisor for 6 years, and on return worked on high power laser to some extent to empower India in satellite defense. I also worked for 3 years for the National Security Council as an advisor. And it is there where I got introduced to the energy issues, and here I am. But let me welcome Vice Admiral Deshpande first, a good friend of Dr. Kelkar, who is our Vice Chairman, Vice President. And we are very happy to have you because you have a wide spectrum of experience and expertise. So we will get down to the flow of the event as put down for most of the speakers here, and I am busy right out just now. So I will give a little brief introduction, and then Admiral, if you want to have a few words. And after that, we'll start with a presentation by my colleague Sayukta, and then we'll forward. So, with your permission, yeah. So, why are we talking about small nuclear reactors? Because I am from the Energy, Environment and Climate Change, and we realize that although we are doing very well in many of the standard renewable energy spectrum, particularly since Prime Minister Modi has taken on as his pet subject that we must get to about over 200 gigawatt by 2023. That is what we have today, and this is compared to less than 10 gigawatt just a few years ago. So India today is producing 1625 billion units, that is BU of electricity, and out of that 70% is still coming from fossil fuel. We have produced 1625 billion units up to now, and we expect to go not net zero by 2070, although the rest of the world is wanting to go net zero by 2050, because the whole scenario will change drastically by 2050, and nobody will like to be on the emitting side. Having said that, India's commitment is to reach 500 gigawatt of non-fossil fuel energy by 2030, and that seems to be on track. Energy demand in 2047, and we are targeting that year because that is when we will be 100 years old since independence. That demand may be of the order of 2,700 BU, almost double of what we have now. Out of this, only about 2,500 will come from the standard renewable energy, that is solar, wind, biogas, etc., etc. So that means we have a gap of more than 200 million units BU for our stated objective of becoming energy self-reliant by 2047. Where does this 200 BU come from? Of course, we have coal, and that it can fill up, but then we will become the world's largest emitter. Next. So therefore, we are talking about, in addition to solar, wind, and biogas, we are talking about nuclear. So, when we look at solar also, we know that the nuclear energy is much more efficient and much more solid in terms of blunt load factor. Today, waste, solar and wind focus are increasing indeed, but then we will not have adequate for claiming self-reliance. The cost of electricity will of course play a role, and the solar requires, we can go solar all over, but the solar requires 450 times more land than nuclear. So if you look at the comparative thing, I'm not giving many details because I am also going to give a detailed presentation. Total cost of customer may come to around 2.13 kilowatt hour, and wind also is about the same. Solar will require more land, which I have already talked about. Biogas electricity, although a little costlier than solar, has a little higher PLF depending on the availability of the raw material. Next one, we'll see. So, we also understand now that earlier the society was a complete no-no towards nuclear. But now I'm understanding the impact of the climate change and the devastation that it can cause, there is a tendency or there is a willingness to look at nuclear in in a different way, and that different way is actually the small modular nuclear reactors. For the simple reason that it is different from the conventional nuclear generation sites. So we otherwise, when you acquire land anywhere, you come across that usual not in my backyard syndrome. So this new technology being very small and mobile also for us eventually can be more acceptable. The new technology also will use very small amount of fissile fuel per reactor. The reactor can be many types. We'll see what is best for us. But it is already established that SMR can be sealed units that will not require refueling for more than 20 years. Hence, we are talking about a technological option to have nuclear energy for power, for electricity, in a very different way. We are set to increase our commercial nuclear power to about 10%. Today we are still only at about 3%. And that is the ongoing governmental program is going. But besides that, even that will not suffice to bridge the gap. And that is already committed. Therefore, safer, quicker SMR production in PPM mode will be critical. Why PPM mode? Because now government has opened up that industry participant is welcome. That is the main game changer, and we are looking at the possibilities. So at this point, I will. These are my initial remarks to make a case that we are trying to do this roundtable in PIC because we are a think tank who influence policies. So we want to go ahead of what's happening if possible. In fact, we are pleasantly surprised that many things are already happening. In fact, Hindu Business Review has brought out that the government is already thinking of how to modify the nuclear regulatory regime laws to allow private player to come in with a more enthusiasm, and how the SMR will change the picture. So it is in this context that we are discussing here today, probably for the first time in Pune, at least in Maharashtra at least. And I tried to get as many experts, as many well-known and well-informed people. So we will commence the kind of discussion with a few words from the chairman.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think after the brief insight given to us by Professor Amitabh, one of the reasons that actually comes across here today loud and clear is that we need to be looking at green energy solutions. And the reason for the green energy solutions are many, but one of the driving forces for that is that fossil fuels in the near future are going to be more and more dearer. They're going to be much, much more expensive. And therefore, with the type of demand that we are looking at, especially the gap between demand and what is the stabilized generated power that we can do in the country today, and when we sort of extrapolate it to maybe 2050, it's going to be 3 to 4 folds. So we want to look at solutions of how we can look at bridging this gap if we as a country are looking at the type of development that we are have envisaged. So when we look at this, there are various solutions, and one of the most cleanest green energy source that is upfront and staring at us is the nuclear energy. Unfortunately, the nuclear energy has its own issues and problems, as has been stated. But today, if you see that the regulatory policy bodies all across the world and considering the type of pressures that climate change and the global environment is going to put on to us in terms of carbon footprints and whatever carbon credits that we have, we would also be sort of, if I may use not such a strong word as forced, but look at other sources by which we would be able to try and see how other green energy sources we could look at. And the biggest one coming up front is nuclear energy. But the nuclear energy, what we are talking here today, the SMR concept, it is not what we normally and traditionally know, which is the 1000 megawatt plus nuclear power plants, which have its inherent problems of safety, environment, etc. But here we are looking at what is the SMR, which is a miniaturized version of a reactor. We are looking at ranges of 80 to 300 megawatts in capacity. We are looking at the mobility of this particular plant and the versatility it has in giving you dedicated microgrid power generation systems, which can act completely independently, or if the situation so warrants, we can even link it up to the grids to give us power supply. And as I said, since world over, this is a phenomena which is taking shape. Today, as we speak, there are about 80 SMRs under various stages of development all over the world. And there are about 20 countries looking at it. So if you actually look at it, the Russians have already commissioned and gone live in 2019. The Chinese have gone live in 2021. The United States is expected to go live by the end of this year with all the operating envelopes of the SMR in place. And therefore, this is something that we need to also look at and try and pick up on this technology and have SMRs as a part of our tech roadmap in future. So instead of playing a catch-up game, I think the policymakers today do realize that this is an area where we need to actually concentrate on to make sure that our energy gaps are reduced in times to come. And today, if you look at where can we say that what has been the most effective, I think the best sort of example, though may not be from a point of view of quoting, is the Ukraine war zone. And the Russians have employed, or rather deployed, the SMR, both for military as well as for civil applications, and it has been pretty successful. So this is where we need to look at, and yes, there are going to be challenges, but that's what we are here all for, which is overcome these challenges. And we need to look at ways and means how we could try and figure out and get the industry also as a partner, as a handshake with the policymakers, and see how best we can progress to make sure that the SMR becomes a reality on the Indian tech roadmap. So with this, we will deliberate a bit more on this. I would request Professor Amitabh to commence the proceedings, and thereafter we will see what is the various inputs that we are getting at.
Thank you. Very cohesive picture that you have given. Thank you. And now we'll start the discussion along with starting with my colleague Sayukta to give the presentation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Malik, sir. And thank you, Vice Admiral Deshpande, for giving your insights. So I've been studying this topic
They can hear you, huh?
for a few months. Now I would like to present what I've studied and understood about the SMRs. So before diving into SMRs, I would just like to create a picture of nuclear energy, what India has in nuclear energy. So currently we have 22 running nuclear reactors with 7 gigawatt of capacity in total. Most of them are pressurized heavy water reactors with capacity having 400 megawatt to 2000 megawatt each. All of them are operated by NPCIL. NPCIL is the Nuclear Power Corporation of India. India's total electricity generating capacity is roughly 400 gigawatts, which means that nuclear energy provides only 2.76% of the total electricity share. But the government is planning to increase the nuclear share, the nuclear capacity, to 19 gigawatt by 2030 and 50 gigawatt by 2047. The Atomic Energy Commission is the main policy body, and NPCIL is responsible for design, construction, commissioning and operation of nuclear power plants. Since atomic energy as a subject is listed under the Union List of 7 schedule, only the central government can make laws and implement everything related to those laws, hence the role of NPCIL. India has almost achieved its three-stage nuclear program. The fast breeder reactors in the third stage are under testing. A few months ago, Prime Minister himself started the operation of uranium-fueled prototype breeder, fast breeder reactor. With fast breeder reactors, we have achieved closed-loop nuclear cycles, which ensure minimal radioactive waste is generated and most of the radioactive fuel is reused in the same loop. People are always taken aback when they hear the word nuclear. All they imagine when they hear the word nuclear is the atomic bombs of Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and the nuclear disasters of Chernobyl and Fukushima. People are even wary of the word radiation. Now let's closely examine all these things. Radiation from a nuclear power plant are ionizing radiation, which are harmful for the body because they have gamma radiations. What people don't know is that most of the ionizing radiation exists naturally. Atmospheric radiation, radiation from buildings, medical processes like CT scans expose us to equally harmful radiation. In fact, you won't believe, but a flight travel from India to USA exposes us to more radiation than entering the nuclear power plant itself. Now, talking about the nuclear disasters, Chernobyl was the worst nuclear disaster till date. One reactor blew up, a 30-kilometer exclusion zone was created, and more than 3 lakh people were evacuated. In 2005, that is 20 years later the accident, a United Nations committee of more than 100 scientists and representatives from IAEA, WHO, UNDP, FAO, UNEP was formed, and it was formed to study the impacts and deaths due to Chernobyl disaster over a period of 20 years. What they found was that less than 50 deaths, 50 deaths were directly attributed to the ARS, that is acute radiation syndrome, which the radiations exposed them to. There were around 4,000 cases of thyroid cancer, mainly in children and adolescents, and only 9 of them died due to thyroid cancer. So the survival rate among the thyroid cancer was 99%, and most of the emergency workers and people living in contaminated areas received relatively low doses of whole body radiation compared to the natural background radiation. And there was no evidence of decreased fertility, no evidence of congenital malformations, that is defects from births, which can be attributed to the radiation exposure. And all these are mentioned in the United Nations report itself. I'm not saying that nuclear accidents are not bad, they are as disastrous and they should not happen. But they happen because of a human error, and all industries are plagued with accidents due to human error. We all are well versed with the Bhopal gas tragedy and the deaths it caused. If we look at the numbers itself, workers dying in a power plant, coal power plant has the highest fatalities, but nobody really talks about deaths in a coal power plant. So we need to change our perspective of looking at the nuclear technology. With this particular discussion, we are talking about SMRs. I'll just quickly go through what are SMRs. Defined by the International Energy Agency, small modular nuclear reactors. They are small because of their capacity. They can generate electricity up to 30 megawatts. They are much smaller, thus land acquisition is not an issue. Modular because they can be made in factory and then installed on site. All the small modular nuclear reactors are Gen 3 and Gen 3 plus reactors, which have passive safety features. So they can shut down on their own when a danger is sensed. All the components of a reactor, heat exchanger, cooler, everything is compressed in one small unit. So these SMRs are nothing but mini versions of conventional reactors like pressurized water reactor, pressurized heavy water reactor, or even boiling water reactors. And most of them, as Sir mentioned, the 80 SMRs which are currently under design or under the construction phase, most of them are using oxides of uranium as a fuel. I would like to draw attention towards molten salt reactors. So these are again advanced tech nuclear reactors. These use fluoride salts as coolants and they operate at higher temperatures than the conventional reactors. Due to higher temperatures, they have higher thermal efficiency, but the most peculiar feature of the molten salt reactors is that they are not pressurized. They work at atmospheric pressure. So in case of an emergency, there is no force or push to drive the radioactive fuel out of the container. So there is no possibility of leakage or meltdown of the fuel. Such types of advanced nuclear reactors like SMRs and molten salt reactors are inherently safer. Now coming back to SMRs, all the 80 SMRs are registered with International Atomic Energy Agency, and the agency itself has published all the data, the designs, fuels, company manufacturing it, country owning it, capacity and everything in the 2022 itself. Talking about the advantages and potentials of SMR, due to their small size, they're ideal for remote and difficult to access villages. They're ideal to deploy there. In the Himalayas and in the remote military operations, they can produce electricity. We all know that data is the currency of the future, and all these data processing centers will require huge amounts of energy. So SMRs are best suited for industries which require high amounts of energy. Nuclear power has highest PLF, more than 80%. SMRs can also be installed quickly than the traditional nuclear power reactors. One of the peculiar features is that no large cooling towers are required. No large quantity of water is required for coolings. SMRs can also be made in standardized designs so that it is cheaper to produce them in mass scales. An advantage of nuclear energy is that it requires the lowest material, even beginning from the construction of the power plant, including the cement, concrete, glass, and the fuel, everything. And also, nuclear energy has the lowest greenhouse gas emissions per gigawatt of electricity produced. NPCIL and IIM Ahmedabad prepared a report in 2024, April this year, titled Synchronizing Energy Transitions Toward Possible Net Zero India, Affordable and Clean Energy for All. This report was published by the Office of Principal Scientific Advisor for the Government of India, and the report studies different scenarios of energy mix that can provide affordable and clean energy for all citizens living in developed India. So by developed India, they're assuming a human development index of 0.9. Our current human development index is 0.64. For a future population of 1.5 billion, energy requirements would be a minimum of 20,000 terawatt hour for 0.9 HDI and a minimum of 14,000 terawatt hour for 0.8 HDI. So the report basically focuses on the energy mix, which includes newer technologies like low carbon hydrogen from fossil hydrocarbons with carbon capture, direct splitting of water to get green hydrogen, advanced photovoltaics, and advanced nuclear technologies such as SMR. The most interesting finding from this report is that among all the net zero scenarios, one which has 330 gigawatts of nuclear energy deployed has the lowest LCOE, that is levelized cost of electricity for the consumers, as well as the greenhouse gas emissions are the least. As sir already mentioned that Russia has gone live with SMR. Russia has a floating SMR near the Arctic which provides 70 megawatt electricity to a remote village in the Arctic. China has also gone live with SMR. They have the world's first commercial SMR in the Linglong 1. The major advantage of SMR is that it need not be situated near coastal regions because it does not require a large amount of water. With SMR, we can go into distributed generation of electricity. SMRs can be deployed in different locations like remote villages in Himalayas, military bases, and they will not only produce their own electricity, but they will also reduce the dependency of such remote locations on large and centralized power plants. This increases the energy self-reliance in smaller pockets and improves resilience against grid failures or natural disasters. SMRs can be placed close to high energy demand centers like industries and hospitals. This way, we can reduce the need for long distance energy transmission, which in turn will reduce the energy losses and improve overall efficiency. SMR can also provide high temperature process heat for industries like cement manufacturing, steel production, and petroleum refining. They can even power remote mining operations, especially in the regions where extending the power grid is not feasible. We can reduce the need of diesel generators and hence cut down the carbon emissions. If we make SMRs or even smaller micro modular reactors portable, we can deploy them in disaster struck areas to provide emergency power so that the critical infrastructure like hospitals and communication networks remain operational. Portable reactors can also be used for EV charging. By decentralizing nuclear power generation, countries can reduce their reliance on few larger power plants, and decentralization increases national energy security. Traditional power plants which require significant upfront investment and fairly long construction times. With SMRs and their modular design, lower capital requirement, shorter construction periods, they make SMRs are a far more attractive options for investment for investors as well as governments. Now, coming at the last point of my presentation, we do face some hindrances in deployment of SMRs. I'll just quickly go through the hindrances we face. The first thing is that the Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage Act 2010, it was enacted to compensate victims of nuclear accidents. It focuses on the strict liability of licensed operators in cases of accidents. Clause 17 of this law says that if you are a designer or a manufacturer or an operator, then you are liable for the accident. Now this "or" word makes more industry designers, manufacturers and operators liable for the accident. So the "or" word should be replaced with and this has made major industrial players turn away from manufacturing and designing of nuclear power plants. Secrecy is another major drawback of the Indian government. Everything related to nuclear is hushed and people are even unaware of the basic nuclear science. I think the government itself should educate people about the nuclear power generation. A successful example will be a nuclear power plant in France. Flaminville and Civaux power plants are open for general public in France to visit. In 1950s, USA Department of Atomic Energy, they ran a truck called Atoms for Peace through major cities. It provided information to people to explain how the nuclear power generation works, and it was one of the major reasons for getting public acceptance to nuclear power generation even after the havoc of atomic bombs. Another policy hindrance is the Atomic Energy Act 1962. Until now, it only allows licenses to be issued to a Government of India department, any authority or corporation established. 2016 amendment allowed for joint ventures among the PSUs, but private companies are still excluded under the Atomic Energy Act. But a ray of positive hope came in the budget 2024 when the finance minister announced that possible joint ventures of public and private companies are welcomed for SMR. Before ending my presentation, I would like to throw some light on recent developments. Government of India is planning to promote Bharat Small Reactors in a big way. A nuclear audit authority in collaboration with International Atomic Energy Agency, amendments to the Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage Act, and the new government-owned companies for owning technology and fuel fabrication are in the pipeline. The plan also includes a proposal to allow private investment in manufacturing of heavy water. A nuclear waste management organization is also to be set up, and government is targeting the deployment of 50 Bharat Small Reactors, that is the small modular nuclear reactors, in India and another 50 abroad within next 10 years. You must have heard about ANIL. Clean Core Thorium Energy is a Chicago-based company started by an Indian Mehul Shah. They have developed a thorium-based fuel called ANIL, Advanced Nuclear Energy for Enriched Life, to honor Mr. Anil Kakaudkar, a prominent nuclear scientist and a former chairman of Atomic Energy Commission. This fuel is a mixture of thorium and small quantities of enriched uranium called HALEU, HALEU, high assay low enriched uranium. So the uranium in this fuel is enriched to more than 5%, but it is less than 20%, so making it proliferation proof, and it is a stronger fuel, hence the amount of fuel required is less. For example, if we consider a 220 megawatt pressurized heavy water reactor, normal fuel requirement would be 1,75,000 bundles of natural uranium. But since ANIL uses highly enriched uranium, the fuel requirement comes down to only 22,000 bundles. ANIL is particularly beneficial for India as India has 1 million tons of thorium reserves and ANIL uses a lot of natural thorium as a mixture in the fuel. Also, the fuel is best suited for pressurized heavy water reactors, the type of reactors in which India has expertise, and most of our current reactors are pressurized heavy water reactors. So that's it from my side. I thank you all.
It's how we can get to energies of clean energy self-reliance. And therefore, we are looking at a 25-year scenario. And so, in that context, we have invited Dr. Gangotra, Suresh Gangotra, and for a keynote. So, may I request you, sir, to please share that.
Vice Admiral Deshpande, and it's a great comfort to have Mr. Patankar here because if I slip up anywhere, he will catch me and help me out in that situation. My senior colleague, of course. And I invite all of you to interrupt me anywhere that you feel you would like more explanation or you feel it is getting too boring, I skip. First slide. This is, let me explain. This is our Rajasthan Atomic Power Station. What you see on the right hand side are the two domes. They are the Rajasthan Atomic Power Station 1 and 2. On the left hand side, what you see is Rajasthan Atomic Power Station 3 and 4. So the difference between the two, if you notice, is the one on the right is the one which was constructed initially, the second ones after Tarapur. These are the pressurized heavy water reactors, and the first unit was under construction. And by the way, if I am too explanative, you can interrupt me and ask me to go slow. So this was the reactor which was being commissioned by the Canadians, and then we had 1974, after which abruptly the Canadians left, and then it took us a long time to commission this reactor, then reactor unit number 2. Of course, what you see 3 and 4 on the left hand side, they have come much later. Next slide, please. I will skip this slide. I will leave this presentation here, by the way. This slide gives us the various units and organizations of Department of Atomic Energy. In context of what we are talking today about the small modular reactor development, you just notice that what you have is the Atomic Energy Regulatory Board. Now this Atomic Energy Regulatory Board, as of today, it reports to the Atomic Energy Commission. So there is a great debate that is going on that it should be an independent body. There was a move to set up what is known as NSRA, National Safety Regulatory Authority, and it will play a very important role in AERB when we talk about the Bharat Small Reactors or the Bharat Small Modular Reactors, because licensing of these reactors will have to be done by AERB. Next one. This is basically the vision of the department and of NPCIL. Here you can see we talk about Department of Atomic Energy, NPCIL, which is the Nuclear Power Corporation of India. Bhavini is the one which is developing the prototype fast breeder reactor. I will touch upon that in the slide when I talk about the 3-stage nuclear power program. Then we also have Ashwini, which was set up in 23, and these are the joint ventures. Next one, please. So now this is our very famous India's 3-stage nuclear program, which was envisaged by Dr. Homi Bhabha, and what the primary objective is to use India's large thorium reserves. See, India has a very peculiar situation that our natural uranium reserves are very, very low, but our thorium reserves, as Sayukta just mentioned, they are, I think, third largest in the world. So the need to utilize thorium for our energy production, keeping that in mind, Dr. Homi Bhabha planned a 3-stage nuclear program, which you will see in the next slide. See now, basically what it does, you see the blue part, that is the first stage. This talks about the pressurized heavy water reactors. Basically, these are the type of reactors which use natural uranium. What you saw in the very first slide, both the reactors, Rajasthan Unit 1 and 2 and Rajasthan Unit 3 and 4. Natural uranium, it does not need any enrichment. What it needs is heavy water. So, in this, what we do is, we use uranium, we use heavy water, and after irradiation, what happens is, this uranium, part of the uranium 238, it gets converted into plutonium. Now this plutonium 239 itself is fissile. Now this is used as a driver fuel in the second stage, which you see in the middle. Sayukta just mentioned about our Prime Minister visiting Kalpakkam facility in somewhere in January. So I'll just explain what he had done and what subsequently has happened. See now, pressurized heavy water reactor, which is a 500 megawatt reactor, it has a core and the pumps and the heat exchangers within the vessel, and the vessel is submerged in liquid sodium. This is a very difficult technology. Now in January, what Prime Minister had done was the loading of the pressure vessel, not of the fuel. The fuel loading has started only very recently. The fuel is a mixed oxide of plutonium and uranium oxide, plutonium to the extent of 21% and 28%, and these fuel loading will take about a month. Why? Because these fuel assemblies are very heavy. They have to be loaded inside a pool which is submerged in liquid sodium. This is remotely done, and I believe, if I remember correctly, 192 sub-assemblies have to be loaded. And in this particular case, we have what is known as the breeder material. Here in the first PFBR, the breeder is depleted uranium. Now this depleted uranium will turn into plutonium. As we build new reactors, the proposed, I will give it to you later, don't, if you want, you can record this or I will explain it to you later, don't worry, don't concentrate on what I am. So sorry, so what we talk about thorium. See, today we are not putting thorium in this reactor. To begin with, we are putting depleted uranium to generate more plutonium. We call it a fast breeder, a prototype fast breeder reactor. So what we are breeding, we are in this breeding plutonium from uranium. But in the subsequent PFBRs, we will replace this blanket, which is depleted uranium dioxide, with thoria, that is thorium oxide. That thorium oxide will convert into uranium-233. This uranium-233 is again fissile, and which will then go into the third stage. So actually what we see today, we have a maturity of the first stage, we are embarking on a second stage, and once we master the second stage, then we go on to the third stage, where we will have reactors which will have uranium-233 as the driving fuel, which is fissile, and the blanket will be thorium-232, which will get converted into uranium-233. Please interrupt me and ask for any clarification anywhere you require. And now there is a very interesting term, though I sometimes write, this word additionality, I could not very easily find in any of the dictionaries. This I think was coined by, I call him my mentor, Dr. Anil Kakudkar. See, when you see the 3-stage program, at that point of time, India had not thought that India would be importing reactors, To give you a little history about why these reactors came about, See, if you refer back to the Indo-US nuclear deal, I think you were involved in all. See, the first country with which we did a bilateral nuclear agreement was US. And the unofficial agreement was that you give us one site or two sites for our reactors. So India promised them 2 sites, one in Gujarat and one in Andhra Pradesh. This was for their light water reactors. Unfortunately, so many years after that, nothing has moved on the ground. I think, sir, basically because I think there is no agreement on the price. I think they are very
Price problem.
Yeah, like
The cost of the imported from USA to you.
that it will be like Enron, you will not be able to sell the electricity. Now, second country was France. With France, we promised them Jetapur site. That was 1650 into 4 reactors, supposed to be very big site. Same story. I mean, the agreement on price has not been negotiated. That's why so far nothing has moved. But interestingly, Russians with whom we had an agreement, we had promised them Kudankulam site. So they were the ones. In fact, it was a grandfather agreement, 1902, where, based on which we built the Kudankulam 1 and 2, which you are seeing there. This is the Kudankulam reactor 1 and 2. 1000 megawatt each. These are in Tamil Nadu. To begin with, it was 1000 megawatt each, so you can imagine 1000, 2000. Then we went in for, now the construction is for 3 and 4, and then 5 and 6, and there are talks about having another site for another 6 reactors of roughly 1000 megawatt each. So this term additionality comes after the Indo-US nuclear deal or the opening up of the nuclear sector, 1 to 3 nuclear sector with the international community. Next one. Some animation, I think. Yeah, just to, you are mentioning about the fuel requirement. See, it just tells you that how much fuel is required. Like 27 kg bundle, which you see on the top left, is a natural uranium PHWR, and for 3 kgs LEU. LEU we use in reactor. In India, LEU is used in reactors in boiling water reactor at Tarapur and also at Kudankulam reactors. There is enrichment is up to 3 to 4%. If there is an interest, I will talk about the enrichments and how it is related to safeguards and security. Now, if you use this much of fuel, the equivalent amount of fuel that we will need is 700 tons of indigenous coal. And you can imagine for that much quantity of coal, how much of handling, how much of port capacity, how much of transportation is required. This is one big advantage of a nuclear power plant. In fact, when you see the cost of a nuclear fuel, the cost of a nuclear fuel is very small percentage of the total nuclear plant. Am I right, sir? Next one. Now, briefly to tell you about nuclear plant development in India, Sanyukta just covered in her talk also. So now efforts are being made globally to use fuel that does not emit carbon dioxide. This is why the interest in small modular reactors or nuclear energy has generated in the recent years. In fact, after 2011 March Fukushima event, the growth of the nuclear power all over the world had stunted. In recent years, it has now picked up because of the carbon decarbonization. Now, to decarbonize the electricity sector by putting up solar power plants, wind energy, renewable, and nuclear plants are important. Now, see, it is very important we talk about renewables like solar, wind. Now, how does it differentiate between nuclear and this conventional solar or wind or even hydro? Now, there is a thing called base load factor. Means that when wind is not blowing, you don't have an electricity unless you store that electricity. But the cost of storing that electricity is very high. You need either batteries or you need some water systems like you have in Scandinavian countries. Now, you talk about the hydro dam. Suppose the rainfall is not good enough, then it affects the electricity generation. Come to think about solar. If like we have a monsoon or you have a cloud cover. So when or in European countries, when the sun sun is not shining for the good part of the day, now you don't generate electricity, and definitely not you don't generate electricity at night. So what happens is that at those times at night, there is a demand, but there is no supply. So this is where nuclear comes in because it has a very steady base load factor. In fact, there is a very interesting case about Germany. What happened was, Germany decided that it will close down all its nuclear power plants, and slowly it did that, and then it thought that it will depend on wind and solar. What happened over a period of time, they found that during the offload, like at night, and when the wind is not blowing, they needed electricity. Now they had to import this electricity from France, which is generated by nuclear. So much so that though they are not thinking about restarting nuclear, but then the price of electricity has gone up because they could not manage the base load factors. So this was a curious case of two cases, in fact. One is Germany and another one is Japan. Japan, unfortunately, after the Fukushima incident, I think roughly about 52 reactors, they shut down. They shut down all the 52 reactors because naturally there was a lot of protest. But then you see the requirement of Japan is met only by petroleum. If you sometimes watch, satellite images, or even if you travel by air, you can see as you approach Tokyo or any of the thing, you can see the oil tankers, So basically the whole country, though this is an advanced country, dependent on oil. But then slowly they also thought that they have to go back to nuclear, and then now they have restarted their nuclear power plants. Okay, then at present we have 24 reactors in operation with total installed capacity of 8180 megawatt. I'll go about details in the next one. Go to the next slide. This is a pictorial view of how it all started. You can see it started with Rajasthan 1 and 2 on the left hand side. Then you have a dotted line, which is 1974, our peaceful nuclear explosion experiment, after which that cooperation stopped. And then how subsequently Madras, Narora and other reactors were built. And in the extreme right, you see this is the Kakrapar nuclear power plant, the unit number 3 and 4. Now, interestingly, if you see this, we started with 220 megawatt. Then we upgraded at Tarapur 3 and 4, 540 megawatts. And that design has now been upgraded to 700 megawatt, which is a pressurized heavy water reactor. In fact, just yesterday, the fourth unit, that is the KNPP, unit 4 has achieved maximum power, that is 705 megawatts, just 2 days back. Next slide. These are some of the pictures. On extreme top left is the Tarapur Atomic Power Station. I must tell you something, very interesting about this. This vintage is actually that Fukushima reactor which blew up. That reactor and this reactor are of the same vintage, same time, right, sir? And this reactor is still operational. Right now it is going some changes, and I think it generates the cheapest electricity in the country, which is less than 1 rupee per unit, right, sir? Of that order. Okay, and of course you see other units. Some are coastal sites, some are inline sites. Next slide. So this is just about some achievements of our department, basically NPCIL. I'll just skip this next one. Now, project under construction, we have pressurized heavy water reactors 7 and 8 at Rawat Bhata. After the Kakrapar unit, we have Rajasthan RAP 7 and 8. We already have reactor 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all 220 megawatt. Now we are building 7 and 8 at Rawat Bhata. They will go critical very soon. Then we have GHAVP at Haryana, light water reactors at Kudankulam 2 units, 3 and 4, 5 and 6. Now, interestingly, fast breeder reactor, which I just told you, which is a second stage reactor for which now the fuel loading is going on. Next one. Now, these are the images of some reactor sites under construction. Next. Now, some time back, the government of India had accorded permission for setting up of reactors in fleet mode. So, this is the breakup of those reactors which are coming up in the fleet mode, 700 megawatt. Next one. Now, this is future capacity addition. Of course, you see Jetapur, Kovada and all that. But personally, if you ask me, I would not like to give any timeline. Sir, am I right?
Yeah.
Because still... Yeah, actually, because there is also a demand that why not convert these sites for indigenous reactors, because they are very nice, like Jetapur is a coastal site. Yeah, correct. So what happens, it all depends on the government and what department decides. Next one. See, that is when the whole discussion should come. Yeah, when we talk about it, we will talk about that. See, Though the today roundtable is on SMRs, good part I am covering about the conventional, so that you see where we have been, what we have the capacity, and what we are looking into the future. Next.
Conventional things.
I will come to that very briefly because she also spoke about it. I will just come to that. Next one. Now, can you this part? Can you blow up this part? Yeah, to the right. So, this is important. This is that we talk about the carbon footprint. It is only larger than wind. These are the figures. I think very basic. I think anybody would like to ask that why there is a carbon footprint for something like a solar plant or for a nuclear plant. Where does it come and where does it come for a wind? Yeah, when you produce steel or material, you generate carbon dioxide, whether it is steel making process or something. So when these figures are for production as well as the lifetime operation of these plants. So that this is where nuclear scores over most of the renewables and the conventional. Yeah. 3 grams per. Next one. Now, to sum up, excellent safety records. I am talking about Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited. More than 50 years of operation of TAPS 1 and 2, long continuous runs of reactors, then improved parameters. In fact, what has happened is, we talk about the 3 accidents or events or incidents, like the 3 Mile Island in the US, then the Chernobyl and the Fukushima. In fact, the nuclear industry has also benefited from these events because after every event, the safety of the reactors has been reviewed and upgraded. So much so that even the Indian operating reactors, they have been upgraded. Like one, for example, one of the major concerns in Fukushima was that the tide height of water was very much above what was design basis. So the DG pumps were located at a height where they were submerged during the tsunami. Now, so now this water, where is this water required? See, you would have seen images of smoke kind of a thing blowing up from the reactor at Fukushima. Actually, what had happened is, see, the fuel is stored in water for 2 reasons. One is that a fuel which comes out of a reactor has sufficient amount of what we call as a decay heat. And then, of course, about 10 feet, about 3 meters of shielding is given, water shielding. Water also acts as a biological shield. So, wherever we have this, these are called spent fuel nuclear pools. I don't know whether I have a slide of that. See, they always have to be maintained so that the top of the nuclear fuel is submerged at least 3 meters below the water. What had happened is that where the fuel was stored, there was a crack in that fuel pool and the water leaked out. And there were no DG sets to replenish that water. Then what happened? The fuel was exposed to air. The heat, the temperature rose. The cladding is zircaloy, and zircaloy reacts with water and also with air. It is pyrophoric in the sense that, in fact, zirconium, uranium, thorium, all this material are pyrophoric. Like what you see in magnesium. Suppose you turn it into powder, it will immediately catch fire. So this fuel cladding, zirconium caught fire, producing zirconium dioxide and hydrogen. This hydrogen was the one which blew up like a explosion. Now, this upgrades to the Indian nuclear reactors. That means that DG sets were shifted higher than the design tsunami levels, wherever, like in the coastal sites. Am I right, sir? So, what has happened is that these events, Fukushima, 3 Mile Island, and Chernobyl, they have helped the nuclear industry in general to improve the safety standards. Next. Now, of course, these are the future plans. I will come down to small modular reactors, Now, of course, Samyukta talked about small modular reactors and the importance. See, in terms of capacity, they are being talked about between 30 and 300 megawatt. Now, as you rightly said, and she also mentioned, there are about 80 designs all over the world, 80 companies, private and government, which are working on the design of small modular reactors. Russia has built one and is operating offshore. I think they started in 2009, finished in 19. The advantage with Russians is that they have a, as sir would know, nuclear propulsion program. They have icebreakers also. And of course, China has recently gone commercial or operating its, it's a advanced gas cooled reactor. It is not a uranium based reactor. So now advantages or the features are, the first feature is that the power is low. The second feature is they are trying to have it factory built, in the sense that I think this is where L&T would be interested perhaps. That means you build those components in a factory, transport them into the reactor site wherever it is required, assemble them, whereas these conventional reactors, they are built and assembled like what we have, the main component that is called the calandria, you know. Calandria is built in a factory, transported, but all systems are welded and they are assembled there. Then another feature is that the footprint is going to be low. I will talk a little technical, very small in the last slide, you know, how India or the world over people are going to focus on that. Like for example, AP300 with the US Westinghouse is making, it says that it will be, I think, in a basketball ground or something like that. Yes, it's a very small footprint. Now, on the plus side, it is that now India is also looking at SMRs, you know, and it is very attractive. Not only that, even International Atomic Energy Agency is now focusing on SMRs. In fact, it has set up a consortium now with the many countries that in terms of design, in terms of deployment and all that. So on the plus side, maybe I think when we have discussion, maybe people can add to it, but I will add only 1 or 2 points. What are the challenges in terms of SMRs? And I will also talk about, like what she rightly said, what the department has. I have also read only in the newspapers about 2 things, that the Bharat small reactor and the Bharat small modular reactor. What is, to my understanding, what is the difference between the 2? Next one. These slides I have just included just to show that how our nuclear power plants are located. In fact, on top left you see that is a Kaiga site, one of our very beautiful sites, and that means just to as a public outreach to show that how our plants are, that surroundings are maintained. Next one. Then of course fisheries and marine life and all that. This is CSR. You can skip this one. This also you can skip, but I am leaving the slide here. This was made. This slide is included. Suppose we always now talk about the opening up of the nuclear industry, you know. What are the opportunities in Department of Atomic Energy, in the government sector, then Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited, and in the times to come when the private industry will also take up, like NTPC or whether it is Tata's or other companies, that what are the career opportunities and at what level we recruit and what will come up. Next one. This is public outreach website. Yeah. Now, small and modular reactor. See, we had done a study for a thorium fuel cycle where we had compared hub and spoke integral fuel cycle. Can you go to the next slide? See, this particular slide we had done long back in 2014. See, this shows a thorium fuel cycle. What you see on the top are the number of reactors at different places. And what you see at the bottom is an integrated facility. Now, integrated facility here, what it means is that you have a fuel manufacturing, you have a fuel reprocessing, and you have a fuel refabrication. You all have located at one site. And to give an example, in India, we would have this facility at Kalpakkam for the fast breeder test reactor. What we call is the fast reactor fuel cycle facility. So I have used this slide to say that once you have SMRs, what will happen? Now you see, we are talking about SMRs and we have not talked about the fuel. The fuel that you said that will be replaced in 20 years. Now Now see, the fuel which we has to run for 20 years cannot be a 3 or 4% enriched uranium. Am I right?
There are many other.
Yeah, because
Maybe, but
see, because now just to give you an example, I talked about the pressurized heavy water reactor. It has natural uranium 0.7%, and the fueling in these reactors is on a daily basis. It has 306 channels. PSW. So out of this 306, every day 3 channels are refueled online. 3 channels, roughly 12 bundles on each. So 12 3s are 36. So 36 new bundles are fed into these reactors every day, and 36 come out. Now this is a pressurized heavy water reactor online fueling. Let us talk about the boiling water reactor that is at Tarapur, which has an average enrichment of 3 to 5%, less than 5%. Same is the case for enrichments for Kudankulam nuclear power reactor, that is a light water reactor. That also has 4 enrichments averaging about less than 5%. Now, these reactors, both at Kudankulam and at Tarapur, they are batch fueling. That means roughly, I think, 18 month cycle. After every 18 months, the reactor is shut down, the reactor top is removed, 1/3 of the fuel is taken out. In fact, the whole fuel is taken out because the fuel assemblies are rearranged. The fresh fuel is put in. Now, this is what we are talking about, a fuel for a roughly 1000 megawatt at Kudankulam and 200, roughly 160-200 megawatt at Tarapur. Now, that means when you have enrichment of 3 to 5%, it runs only for 18 months. You have to stop it. Now, if we have to talk about reactor which will go up to 20 years, I think we have to touch an enrichment of 18 or 20. I will explain. Yeah, I will explain, I think, for your benefit, and I come to that slide, why the limit of 20% comes, So so the limitation would be, one limitation would be, if you are talking about SMR which will run for such a long time, the enrichment has to be very high. As a corollary, I think India does not commercially produce enriched uranium. Even for our boiling water reactors and of course for Russian reactors, the fuel is imported. The implication being, this is my field, my subject, I will tell you. See, please understand that whenever you import a reactor, now first we are talking about a reactor. If you have imported a reactor, that reactor essentially will have to be subject to what we call as an international safeguards. We call it IAEA safeguards. That means, I will come to the very short slide is there, that what it entails, Now the second thing, suppose you build your own reactor. There are cases like we start with Rajasthan 3, 4, 5, 6, Narora 1, 2, all 20 except Madras, and Tarapur 1 and 2. This is, I think, the story of our separation plan. So we wanted to have some reactors where the IAEA inspectors will not snoop in. We don't have any reporting sector. Now, if you have an Indian reactor like a Rajasthan unit or Narora unit, but you are using imported fuel. In these reactors now we are using fuel or uranium which is imported from Australia or from Canada or Kazakhstan. Now, if you are using fuel in an Indian reactor, again the whole reactor goes under IAEA safeguards. That means you have to report what fuel you are putting, what is the inventory. I'll come to that, what inventory is they check. So, yes. Now, what it means that if you have an SMR, we are talking about an SMR, or even if we are talking about an Indian SMR, if it is based on something we are talking about, light water reactor fuel or even the fuel for the nuclear propulsion, if the fuel is imported, because see, the fuel, whenever we talk about a reactor, especially an imported reactor, we talk about what is known as a lifetime guarantee of the fuel supply. This was a contentious issue for boiling water reactors at Tarapur, where US had stopped supplying fuel after the Pokhran experiment in 1974. We had difficulties how it was surmounted. It is I think a diplomatic story. So now, if we are thinking of going beyond a 0.7, then essentially it will have to be imported fuel. Imported fuel means if we are having SMRs, it is going to be a reactor under IAEA safeguards. And I will talk about two concerns. Go back to the previous slide. Uh, the last line you see, SMRs will essentially be developed in a hub and spoke configuration. Why? Suppose, let us say that you get SMR, it is not an Indian SMR, you get it, let us say, from XYZ country for various reactors. Like you are talking about using NTPC sites which will be vacated by thermal power plants to locate our SMRs. Now, what will happen is the SMRs will be at various places. Go to the next slide. Like you see, what you see on the top, it may be more than 40, 50. Like you said, we were talking about 500 locations. 50, sorry. Even 50 is a very big number. Now, see, that means you have uranium, enriched uranium, at, let us say, 50 sites in India, geographically scattered all over the country. And there is a central place from where you are supplying. Now, this fuel has to be moved in the public domain. Moving a fissile material, either enriched uranium or what is known as the irradiated fuel, in a public domain, sir will testify, is a great concern. I will come to that thing. That there are three things we talk about: safety, security, and safeguards. I will explain the difference between the two. This will impact the security, safety, and safeguard. So that means you will have to ensure that when the fuel moves from the reactor, from the central facility to the reactors and back, because every reactor site you cannot have a big pool, or even if you have a big pool, over a period of time that pool will get filled and you will have to build what is known as AFR, away from the reactor facility. As of today, for Indian reactors, we have only two, one at Tarapur and another one which is, I think, has now coming up at Kudankulam. Now, when you have so many reactors, you will have to store the fuel both. I'll come to that slide where the fuel you see. Go to the next slide. Now, the concern is one, I told you about the regulatory concern. As of today, Atomic Energy Regulatory Board, I think they are working on it, but they still do not have a document because there are siting requirements, there are operational requirements, there are licensing requirements, new kind of reactors, imported reactors. So they are working on it. They will take time. They will have to work. In fact, they have to start work right away. Second is the nuclear material. Nuclear material, if you want an explanation of nuclear material, I have slides. I will come to that. If you want to know what is the nuclear material, no, I will come to that. I'll show you the slides. You just remind me there are slides. Nuclear material, safety, security. In fact, safeguards also should come. Safeguards is nothing but non-proliferation. Due to severe external event and the security and safety during transportation of both fresh fuel and spent fuel in the public domain. Next one. This just conventionally to tell you that India follows what is known as the closed fuel cycle. Basically what happens, what the fuel comes out of the reactor is rich in plutonium. We reprocess it, separate plutonium, use it like I told you about the prototype fast breeder reactor. This is called a closed fuel cycle, what we follow. France also follows, Russia follows, but US follows what is known as a once through nuclear fuel cycle. They don't reprocess. They say that that irradiated fuel is a security hazard. So we follow this cycle. Next one. Okay. Now let me tell you about three fissile material. I told you nuclear material. Nuclear material is basically uranium-235, uranium-233, and plutonium-239. That means these three nuclides are the ones which undergo spontaneous fission, and these are the ones which can be used to make a nuclear device. Now, a difference between a nuclear material and a radioactive material is, see, radioactive material like cobalt-60, or you have the sources for industrial radiography, for medical radiography, they do not undergo nuclear fission. You cannot make a nuclear device out of those. So when I talked about the nuclear material safety, these are the three nuclear material. Of course, I will not go through the details at how they are generated. The diagrams are self-explanatory. Now, let me talk a little bit about the percentages that we talked. On the right hand side, what you see is a centrifuge, diagram of a centrifuge. Basically, on left top you see is natural uranium. You see the red part, that is the 0.72 uranium 235, which occurs in nature, which is naturally undergoes natural fission, which we use in our pressurized heavy water reactors. Now you go to the second one, it is 3 to 4% uranium 235. This is what is used in the light water reactors. And then the last one you see, which is more than 90% uranium 235, this is basically used for nuclear weapons. Now the most conventional way of enriching is the centrifuge, which you see on the right. Basically what is done is uranium is converted into uranium hexafluoride. Uranium hexafluoride is a gas. It is rotated at a very high speed. It is like what you see, you churn the butter, What happens is the lighter material comes to the center. That means the butter comes to the center and the liquid goes to the side. Same thing happens here between uranium 235 and uranium 238. Uranium 235 oxide gets concentrated into the center. 238 goes to the sides. It is taken up from the center, fed into the second cascade. There are a number of cascades in almost thousands. So the enrichment plant. So this is where you generate uranium 235 for a nuclear device. There are two ways of doing it. Uranium 235 enriches more than 90% or plutonium 239. Like you have the case of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Next one. Of course, I will skip this one. This talks about spent fuel. Next one. This is just to tell you about how safeguards are implemented worldwide. See, this is the development of a nuclear weapon. I think Admiral will appreciate this slide. So, what the safeguards, I talked about IAEA safeguards, it concentrates on what you see over there as the nuclear material. Next one. Now, what are the safeguards methods? They are basically verification methods used by the International Atomic Energy Agency. What is done is, one is known as the NUMAC, that is nuclear material accounting. You have to submit monthly reports of what inventory you have. Here I must tell you, when there is a plutonium, obviously in all the SMRs also, once you irradiate, the uranium will get converted, some part will get converted into plutonium. You have uranium. The least count for reporting to IAEA for plutonium is gram, 1 gram. Even 1 gram you have to report. 1 gram here and there you have to account for. And in case of uranium, it is 1 kg. That is the least count. So monthly reports have to be submitted. Verification during periodic visits. Now this is where with another challenge. Maybe I think somebody will start talking about it. Now what happens is, I will give you an example of a reactor which is under IAEA safeguards in India. For example, the Tarapur Atomic Power Station. The IAEA inspectors in a pair will visit that reactor, I think once in a month. They will come all the way from Vienna. They will be posted, they will be there for about 2 to 3 days. They will do the nuclear material accounting, some measurements they will do, some equipment is there. Now, why I am saying that this increases, like suppose when we opened up the Indo-US nuclear deal, one of the requests from IAEA was that there will be more inspectors to visit because you have so many more facilities. So the load on the IAEA inspectorate, I think if there are young people, they can listen to this statement that I made now. See, the load on the IAEA inspectorate, and with the SMRs coming up, not only in India, worldwide, the demand for professionals in nuclear safeguards and also nuclear security will rise manyfold. So that means those who are thinking of taking up nuclear security safeguards as a career, they can think that it will, with the advent of opening up of nuclear sector, SMRs and all that. Employment, yeah. Opportunity, yeah. Yeah. I think, no, I was not clear because I have to maybe ask Dr. Kakotkar that what exactly is this nuclear audit authority? Yeah, maybe if you have an idea, you can tell me. But to my mind, when this Indo-US nuclear deal was being negotiated, IAEA had asked India that you increase your contribution. See, every nation has a contribution to the IAEA. for wind. But now India's contribution is as per the India is treated as a what is that a growing country, not as an advanced country. Those countries which are financially advanced, like US, France, UK, and all that, their contribution is based on their economic ranking, and their contribution is higher. India refused. They said that we will contribute only as per our basket. So what has happened is, but IAEA was saying that because of you, we have to increase number of visits. Now what happens? Let us say that we have 50 SMRs. Take it from me, all these 50 SMRs, every month, at least 2 inspectors will have to visit and do all these activities. And of course, the other challenge, of course, what they do is what is known as the containment and surveillance measures. These take care of safety, security, safeguards. Of course, these are design requirements. They are not, surveillance is a regular thing. Go to the next one. No. No. On the contrary, I will tell you.
We talk about it. Is that so? Then it's a no-go situation.
I am not saying no go. I am not saying it.
No-go for 25 years of producing to 200 billion.
I will come to that.
No, we should talk about that rather than go back.
No. So let me explain a little bit more. See, when we talk about the reactors, we call it as a NUMAC. It is called a item counting. Okay. Anyway, I'll skip that. But I will go to the. Okay. In reactors, what happens? Like you see an SMR. There is a reactor. There are 3 places where the nuclear material will be there in a reactor. Basically, one is what we call as the fresh fuel store. That means whatever fuel, whether you are making in India or importing, when it comes to the site, obviously everything does not go into the reactor immediately. It is stored into what is known as the fresh fuel store. And fresh fuel is, he will also tell you, is handled by hand as of now. Because if you see the fuel at pressurized high water reactors, even Fuden column fuel, actually you can touch with the hand. Only I think PFBR fuel, because of plutonium, you cannot touch with the hand. But SMRs, if they are based on light water reactor, you will have to essentially, a man, you imagine any human can physically hold that. Recently there was fuel loading going on, and I have seen the fuel loading in many reactors. It is manually done. Manually done means when you have a man touching a nuclear material, you also have a risk that he could divert that material. Now this diversion is interesting. It could be by an individual or by a state itself. Like there have been states which have been known to have diverted nuclear material. There are technical measures which are known as the bias, measurement bias. I will not talk about it. The second one is the reactor core. In reactor core, what happens? You put natural uranium, enriched uranium, which gets converted over a period of time into plutonium. So you also have, there are measures to account for plutonium or depleted uranium in the reactor. That is also measured, which the inspectors do. We also do it. Then after this reactor comes, the fuel comes out, which is highly irradiated. It goes into what is known as the spent fuel pool, where you have to not only for safety, but for non-proliferation risk also you have to monitor. So answering your question, the load on the safeguards, I am not talking about security right now, the load on the safeguards will increase dramatically. We will quickly, I think, coming to the end. I would, you can skip that. Just to give you an example, I was talking about all the
We want to focus on
SMR.
how we can get SMR acceptable and done.
Okay.
But we go back and if that doesn't happen, then we will not go
No, I'm not talking that. I am only talking about 2 or 3 challenges, which also at some point of time will have to be addressed. Next one. Okay, I will just explain. There are since I don't know whether we should go through this. Last one. See, very short circuit. See, I would like to talk about nuclear safety, nuclear security, and nuclear safeguard. These are the 3 terms which are often used and very important. Now,
Again, don't mind. If we are talking about SMR in mobile mode, in the civilian space, all this is becomes irrelevant.
No.
It becomes built-in.
no. I will give you an example. No. Let me very. No,
What he says is right, because all these factors will be considered
these are priori, these are the earlier factors. No, I will very quickly go through the two slides to make this. Yeah, see, nuclear safety is the achievement of proper operating conditions, prevention of accidents or mitigation of accident, consequent resulting in potential of workers, the public and the environment from undue radiation. It talks about radiation, it does not talk, it talks about cobalt and other sources also. Security, the prevention and detection and response to theft, sabotage, unauthorized access, illegal transfer or other malicious act involving nuclear material and radioactive material. It talks about nuclear radioactive material. Yeah, no, it talks about radioactive material also. But the non-proliferation, IAEA safeguards are a set of technical measures that allow the IAEA to independently verify a state's legal commitment not to divert nuclear material from peaceful purposes to the generation of nuclear weapons. I will very quickly give an example. I will not go to the next one. Now you see the case of Ukraine war. Now, Ukraine war, if a reactor is bombed, you can have all the three. You can have a concern of nuclear safety. Suppose there is a fire, that means public will be in danger. Suppose somebody carries the nuclear material and uses it for some malicious event, that will be nuclear security. And if suppose the material is diverted and used to make a nuclear device, it will be a nuclear non-proliferation. And let me very quickly come down to the last two slides. Allow me. These are two books. This is a biography of Dr. Kakodkar, which I had done with him in 2019. It has chapters on Pokhran 1, Pokhran 2 and civil nuclear cooperation. And the other one, next, sorry, this is a biography of Dr. Chidambaram. This again, Pokhran 1, Pokhran 2 and on the diplomacy. Both of these two, our respected chairmen, they were involved in 74 and 98 also. Very quickly, last slide I will tell you. Just to explain the two concerns, the two terms, we heard about Bharat small reactor and Bharat small modular reactor. Now what I show you is a picture of a pressurized heavy water reactor. Now Bharat small reactor, which will be a version of this particular reactor, see that the reactor is horizontal. It is an online fueling, 220 megawatt. What is going to be done is, you see the double wall on the sides, this yellow that you see. What is being proposed is that there will be a steel liner which will be inserted between these two. It will help in reducing the exclusion zone. So this particular concept is the Bharat small reactor 220 megawatt, which now the department is making for and Bharat small modular reactor most likely will not be a horizontal reactor. It will be something like a vertical pressurized water reactor, but the difference is all the reactor parts will be modular, which can be transported to site. Bharat small reactor is not modular. Thank you. I'm sorry I've taken longer than I should have.
No, thank you very much. But I'm sure Mr. Kotwal can throw some light on how it can be done.
No, I am not a person who will tell you some things which are not possible. Whatever is possible, I'll
No, it's not possible.
Having
today.
said that,
But one second, please. It's not possible today as per the standard
I will come to
operating
I
procedure.
understand.
But CIC should be able to
Yeah,
tell
I'll
us
come.
how it can be made possible.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Suresh. Actually, your first slide gave me memories of my first job in L&T. 1968 I joined, and my first job was in the nuclear
Lab 1
first
center.
RAPP 1 and 2. And RAPP 2, everything including site assembly and all, I have myself done.
Oh, great.
And after that, every single reactor I have been involved in the reactor or the reactor equipment. So to that extent, I have a little knowledge about reactors and PHWRs and so on. Then of course it went to PFWR, that's the fast breeder reactor, PFBR, which also we participated in and manufactured it. And later on I was involved in the ITER, the fusion reactor. So I have got this general, that's a fortunate or unfortunate thing.
It's a fortunate thing.
Now having said that, now I want to, because you have covered it in such great detail, I don't want to go into technologies of SMRs and all that, except to say that SMRs are basically in categories. One is land-based, which all of us talked about, another is marine-based, which unfortunately we mix one to the other. Russians have produced a floating reactor. It has nothing to do with a land-based reactor. They have used their experience in making icebreakers and use that as an ideal reactor, which they have converted into a floating reactor, which they've successful. That's the one and only light motor, this what you call commercially operated reactor, a floating reactor. There is no other reactor in the anywhere in the world which is as of now either operational or cleared to operate. Zero. The closest that it happened was NewScale is a company in US. In fact, L&T at one time I had even a thought of a collaboration with them, which was later on, of course, no use at all because the entire thing has been scrapped. They came out with a modular design of 77 megawatts or so, and the idea was not to make distributed SMRs all over the place. They designed a reactor where a large reactor was made into modular segments. So a large part of a reactor was made into modules, which could be added on or subtracted, whatever it is. And that was their design new scale. They came very close to sort of getting the clearance, and now that whole thing is out again because there was a big problem commercially and the whole thing is out. The next you would have heard of is Bill Gates' thing, which is much talked about. 2008 it started. About 2 months back, they have now got clearance for the non-nuclear part to be started in Renewable. No clearance yet for the nuclear part. So these things have a actual reason. And when you talked about it, I want to be very practical and somehow not give some stories which have been floated around. Now, then there are the high temperature gas reactors. Again, many of them are at research stage. There is liquid metal. Now you mentioned about liquid metal. The Bill Gates reactor, it is a liquid sodium. Liquid sodium when you touch, there are always attached. You know how it is and what problems we are also going through in handling of liquid sodium in fast breeder reactors. Then there is a molten salt reactor, which is a high temperature. Again, the problem there is the material. You know, there is extremely very rare materials and alloys which can withstand the kind of corrosion which molten salt reactors are subjected to. Histola is one of those, extremely expensive, but otherwise you have to use graphite or something like that. So that is at that stage again, laboratory scale. And then there are micro reactors which go into even 1 and 2 and 5 megawatts. Now coming to the real practical issues, you mentioned most of them in various slides, but let us face facts. A nuclear reactor, obviously, as you rightly put it, has to go through its nuclear reaction. Without that, it is not a nuclear reactor. A nuclear reaction has necessarily got to maintain requirements of safety and safeguards. More importantly, the biggest block is the mental block which civil population have. That is the civil acceptance of a nuclear. Yeah. Now, perception is something which today we may talk about. Oh, it's it can be managed. It is precisely that which our country has not found it possible to manage at all. Okay, so you look at any kind of thing when it comes to, you mentioned about fast breed, these 1650 megawatt. No, wait a minute. So perception, how it has happened? 1650. Yeah. So can you please, hello, No, wait a minute. Coming to that. See, let's not jump to something which has become a catchword, but let's see what are the basic things. So, we'll be finished. Then you can ask your questions. I want to complete this exercise. 1650 megawatt French reactor. I personally was there to sign an agreement with Mr. Modi sitting there for that French reactor. It was April 2014. Today, nothing has happened. And what has happened? Politics has completely massacred the project. Jetapur is nowhere, and all because there is something like radiation. As you rightly put it, perception is a problem. Perception has been a problem all these years. We have not been able to find a good solution in India. Other countries have. France, I have myself participated in the ITER program because I have been there a number of times for the cryostat, and they manage perception by actually making things public. Let families come and visit. Let them go through all the reactor vessels. And that every week there are. So that is the management of perception. Our case, unfortunately, for whatever reason, I don't want to comment on why, but for some reason, nuclear has been maintained a black box. The surest way of creating misconceptions is by creating a black box approach. it must be the first approach that open it out. There is nothing very secret about any nuclear reaction today. Every textbook gives it. So the point is, this has been a problem. Now we may say PIC must take a role. Of course we can take a role. We can invite all people in various public fora, call the radiation specialists, as you rightly put it. Radiation is not something to be worried about. We have ourselves done nuclear fueling in Kakrapar and all that. What it means, there's nothing to be scared about, but there is something to be explained to public. What they mix up is a nuclear reactor with a nuclear bomb. And the two are so widely different that this perception is a problem. Now, we may say, oh, that is something we should do. Of course, we should do, but we have not been able to find it. Now, when will this become a problem? Today, it is being managed how? You have got a few reactor sites. Let's say, like you showed the picture of RFPP1. I have worked on RFPP1, 2 and all that subsequently. And then the 500 or 700 megawatt things are coming up. So in one campus, which to tell you in geographical terms, it is about 1.6 kilometer radius is a totally secure zone. Beyond that is a 5 kilometer zone, and the last is an emergency zone, which is 16 kilometers. 16 kilometer radius is a zone which you have to maintain certain decorum and discipline. Now the thing is, if you have a number of small reactors in the same place, the action is the same. The number of people required for security, staffing, everything is the same. Whereas if you split that into n number of reactors all over the country, for each of them, you have to have a radius. Now obviously, there are enough literature on it as to what should be the radius. So obviously, if the radiation is a very small amount, the radius, that 16 kilometers you can ignore. Why US has chosen 77 kilometers megawatts is because they have been able to eliminate the emergency zone. They have still got a 5 kilometer zone. Now imagine a 5 kilometer zone in India, in a populated area, you have a 5 kilometer zone. There is not only question of maintaining that security. What happens to the aspects of even terrorism? How are you going to control so many sites? Because finally each is a site which has got a potential. Safeguards is a major issue. So instead of thinking of hundreds of small reactors, the real issue that we should be thinking in a practical terms is that we have today reached a stage. Everything happens slowly in India, unfortunately, sir. This 700 megawatt should have been standardized at least 10 years back. It is not standardized even today. But having said that, 700 megawatt, number of such we have got. We have to standardize a particular design. Okay? When you talk about modular, by no stretch of imagination is any of our reactor design, including your famous Bharat, what is called, there is no stretch of imagination is modular. I have gone through every single manufacturing detail, so I know what it means is modular and what is this. So it is a custom built, almost custom built. Even if one reactor is put up in Rajasthan, another put up in Kakrapar, the two are not the same. I mean, that's the level we have reached to standardization. So first thing is, let us standardize. If you want to standardize on a smaller one, 220 megawatt, then that itself, and make it in modular, this I am afraid, what happens in all these nuclear areas is that either academicians get into it or they are scientists. Unfortunately, industry don't get into what is modularization. And modularization, if you want to do, it is industry which will tell you how to modularize, and not physics, nuclear physics, or they cannot do it.
You are saying even next 5 years, we will not do
unless we do modularization of the 220 megawatt. See, there is a problem here. Yes, yes. We will be talking about it, sir. Yes, we will.
If we cannot move on the path?
No, we can move away from the past by modularizing the design that we have and which we have mastered. Let us not think about some new design. I'll come to that. What is now on the cards? One is, as they call BSR, it is just, okay, I'm not wanting to use some words, but it is nothing. Okay, it's just a way of talking. And world is doing this, so we are doing BSR. What is BSR 220 megawatt? Forget about it. It's not modular. When it comes to BSR, nothing. So now come to.
Let us not blame India.
No,
There is nothing modular in the world so far.
no. Hold on.
Nothing is going to come in.
So now coming to.
There is enough time for us to think.
Yes, wait a minute. So there is enough thinking going on modularization. You take.
India. That's what I think.
No, BSR. BSR is an Indian concept. Why should we say that it is modular? Okay, fine. No, it has come because there are people who are working on it. I know what is happening in BRC. Shall I tell you what is happening in
You
BRC?
don't have to tell me. I
So,
wait
in
for
which
50
case,
years.
in which case, modular reactors are going on in India, but that is a different module. It is not BSR.
Precisely, this is the point we should discuss here, rather than blame the system.
I'm not blaming anything.
Yeah.
I am saying this is reality.
State of the art.
Yes.
This is what I'm saying. So now this is the reality. of
Yes.
what
So now, what is reality? Supposing you talk.
all the developmental phase.
Yes.
DRC and DAE was responsible to
So,
do a complete
yes,
developmental activity
right.
of its three stages.
So now, if you want to go
And
from
it is
here,
not known in the world also.
so now, if you want to go to the next stage of
Yeah.
making it really happening in India as a modular design, my humble suggestion is look at where we are strong. We have got the 220 megawatt design, which is strong, but it is unfortunately not modular.
That's right.
So the first stage is to convert it into modular reactor. Okay. Now there are two approaches. As you rightly said, heavy water reactors, pressurized heavy water reactor is the concept we have been used to and which we have mastered. The other thing is what your Dr. Nayak has been very passionate about. Arun Nayak, in fact, you should invite him here. I've already spoken to him. Having said that, his passion is what? To make a modular reactor of a pressurized water reactor. Okay, he has worked out any number of. I have got all that. I don't want to take time to show it. Basically, he has got modular design, which he claims can a number of such reactors can be put inside a particular area where a thermal power project or coal project is. Okay, so no, it is not. Now the catch is this that he has not touched upon the safeguards issue. He has not touched upon because these are. It's like a person is now concentrating on design, how to make it modular, how to make it industrially modular. So that he has done, and he has done a lot of work on it. He has been working for the last 7
part
years.
of the problem. But the real problem is to make it happen in a transparent manner.
Exactly. So
So that's
transparency is the key.
So,
Right.
so it becomes commercially viable and also the perception change.
Yes. So the perception change is a very broad issue, and we can have a session on it. We can play a little role in that, and there we can definitely, at least as PIC, to play a role in changing people's perception. It's not very easy. It will take some years, but it needs to be done. The second part is modular design, which this is a good idea to begin with.
That's a base to start with. Yeah.
Now you talk about other countries. In other countries, the one which is coming closest, I am not saying they are top tier, is Rolls-Royce.
Sorry?
Rolls-Royce and Westinghouse. See, Rolls-Royce, like India, Rolls-Royce have got huge experience in producing reactors for nuclear submarines. Okay, I happen to have worked on the nuclear submarine, so I know a little bit about that. Now, this particular this design is very compact. Unfortunately, what happens is there has been in a military environment, everything is secure. Finally, you know how much you really care for that particular thing. The safeguards and all are not allowed to issue. But if the same technology is used, and what Rolls-Royce has nicely done, they have come out with a 470 megawatt design, very nice design, which they are now trying to popularize. They have not yet got clear.
Pressurized.
No, it is a pressurized water.
Yeah, pressurized.
Yeah, plain water. It's not heavy water. The other design is Westinghouse. Westinghouse has also got a good module to begin with. Again, both these companies, with all their experience, they've got decades of experience. None of them have yet got clearance from nuclear regulatory board. They have not yet got that.
Because they are referring to the existing regulatory.
They even knowing that, they are now going to approach the same nuclear regulatory authority for clearance of those.
Yes.
It takes years.
No, that is what has to change. We can't say this has been happening and we cannot do anything different.
How do we want to change it?
It is an example of new scale took a very long time.
Yes. New scale licensing took about 6 years. After having got the license, they were the first. Okay.
You mean to say we can do nothing about it?
No, it's not nothing.
We means we the people.
So
I'm not talking we in
as far as
place.
we are concerned, as people, we should.
If there is fissile material, if there is going to be a nuclear reaction, whether you do it in a large place, small place, modular.
It should back and make a difference. That is my whole argument.
It is not that. It is not that. Don't say that.
That is my whole argument.
Perception, I'm saying few words. Perception. We are getting reactors everywhere of all.
considering if any accident is
No,
now question is, this is the question. The bomb and reactor are entirely two different things. If you want to compare, like Diwali, atom bomb is a actual nuclear bomb, and Lavangi Chota is a reactor. The reactor can never become a bomb in lifetime, whatever happens, even if you open it. So there is no thing. Huh? No, but this is where I am saying, this is the perception which Western countries have developed and spread all over.
We are not talking about nuclear technology or SMR in isolation. We are talking about containing disaster of the climate change, which will be much bigger than what we have seen so far.
Climate change is second issue.
No, it's not second issue. You are talking to climatologists.
That is right, but we are talking climate change only because of the carbon dioxide.
Of course.
No, that is the whole issue.
No.
The whole which has gone in ozone is the basic issue.
You are not even talking about ozone.
No, because you have to talk. Western people have already exploded.
Talk separately.
No, that is 40,000 bombs already have been
Coming to your
exploded.
point, Dr. Malik, I
For
want to
testing.
come down to what should we do.
That is the whole issue I think we should talk of.
We sort of things brainstorming on how it can be done, what different route it has to take, what different policies government should
Absolutely, yeah. So to that extent, my suggestion would be that when you talk about modular reactor, today it has been dealt with in a very, again, a closed group.
Yeah, but we are talking about 25-30 years time scale.
Let me finish. So in that closed group, there are some good thoughts here. Okay, I know what is happening there, but we need to talk about it openly with the industry involved and try to say that by so and so year, it may take 4 or 5 years to come out with a totally modular design of what we can call modular reactor.
Which can be manufactured.
Because that's why I said industry must get involved. Modularization, what it means, how to mass produce, and all that. There are good ideas on that. That's one part. So the second part is the perception management, without which, even if the best of modular reactor comes, acceptance of that by public is. Now, what do we do in the intervening? That you have modular design, but you have a problem of perception which is going to take longer. My suggestion is that follow the kind of thought process which NewScale had adopted, which means crash down the time it takes to put up a nuclear reactor by making it modular, so that you talk about even the same number of sites, but put in more of those reactors so that you settle the problem of security, safeguards and everything. Don't increase number of sites, not like hundreds of sites. Standardize, modularize. That if you do, then we are solving the intervening problem. Because the acceptance, public acceptance safeguards, it is going to be a long-term issue where EIC can certainly play a role. The other part is modularization, where we can recommend that there should be a lot of industries coming in. And the third is this part about how to make it, how to crash down the time it takes to make reactors. And it will definitely help. This is all I have to say.
Like it, Mr. Kudaswar, who is an industrialist, who will know both the pros and cons. So, may I request you to just make a comment?
I can make a few comments. The elephant in the room is the carbon border adjustment.
Yeah.
And we seem to be totally oblivious to what it is going to do to jobs in India. And the rate at which EPCI, sorry.
You are right.
It is so slow.
Yeah.
That we are going to miss the bus. We are going to lose jobs.
Yes.
And we are going to be crying 10 years from now.
No.
That's, as a company, since we are also outside the country, we've seen what needs to be done for ourselves. We can't do it for it. It's not a nuclear power plant anyway. But I think we need to start moving right away. And what Mr. Kotwal said, I totally agree with. But I think, and I think our company and your company, former company, are in the same group. The first thing that we need to do is forget SMR. Forget SMR generating any nuclear power for India for the next 10 to 15 years. 10 to 15 years. 10 to 39. Because there's no design available. And it will need a lot of time for that design to be made and then approved and then manufactured.
Small interrupt. Not an Indian design, but there could be a possibility that India imports you an example. Kulam 1 and 2. I think even today much of technology has not been used.
So may I say something here about
let me just say one thing.
I think he let him complete. That's his points which are
I think we have a 220 megawatt design.
yeah.
While we are working towards modularizing it, allow people like Tata Power yesterday, I think they come on and that allow them, if it's called Bharat Small Reactor or whatever, make the rules. You know, the rules, making the rules is in the hands of the government. Convincing the population is in the hands of the government, not us. That it is the safe thing, like the way the French have done. And at most, you know, that nuclear part of the power plant, we showed a schematic, which was the reactor and the secondary circuit. Keep the secondary circuit under the control of NPCI. Allow Mr. Tata or whoever it is, or Mr. LNT, to run the secondary cycle. Mr. Adani can run the secondary cycle and generate the power. Charge Mr. Adani or whoever it is for getting the steel. Let him pay for the whole power plant. Make the rules like that. The Atomic Energy Act is still, you know, everything in nuclear is in the hands of the government. Private sector is generating power. Let private sector generate power. Let it be the old design. We need to move fast to clean energy. And as was shown in that presentation, there is, I mean, wind, solar is not going to do it for us. You need certain amount of base load generation. The fossil fuel power plants will have to come out of, will have to be decommissioned.
20 years time from now, we'll have to look at the concept.
Yeah. And nuclear is like your 220 megawatt power plant is the cheapest. Maybe less, maybe a little more than Tarapur because that's what.
No, it is cheapest in the world.
It is cheapest, it is safe, it is reliable.
Reliable.
Just allow Mr. Tata, I'm sure can go to the Bombay stock market and raise 100,000 crores. Right? That should be enough for 20 megawatt power plant.
JRD for a very long time was a member of the Atomic Energy Commission.
Yeah. Whatever. I mean, but you know, we need to stop digressing. We need to do what is required.
I think should I support you by one few statements? The second statement which he has given, let the main core operation be done by the Department of Atomic Energy and all outside operations be done by the other parties. We have already let me finish it now.
No, that's why I'm suggesting.
Yeah.
Let's look at the
And just let me complete first thing. We have already operated in this fashion. Not power plants, but radiation related Shri plant, which is sludge ionization, where the nuclear part is inside and the outside part is different. So nuclear part has been handled by BRC and outside by the private part.
No, earlier before the IPPs came in, private sector was not allowed to put even coal-fired power plants.
That's right.
Now it's happening.
So this is an excellent suggestion, and then 20 megawatt, 220 megawatt becomes almost a running SMR. Running SMR. Because it is well proven design for last 50 years now. 12 plants are working, no major accidents. So all the features which SMR is offering is already existing in that particular system.
Professor Malik, some of us had attended a meeting with DAE and they wanted to know what can be done. And we said, you give us the orders, don't give us one order in 10 years. Give us 100 orders in 1 year.
SMR will work on the scale only.
No, but even your 220 we can reduce the cost.
By that is
LNT can reduce the cost by planning and making that nuclear power plant in maybe 3 or 4 years instead of 10 that it takes. But what we said was the nuclear establishment has to have the right number of trained manpower.
That is the very issue.
We said you bring back people who have retired, if necessary. You allow companies like EIL to participate because they do a lot of quality work. There are other foreign companies who do quality work. Because this is going to need a huge amount of investment and it has to be a mission for the country if we want to keep jobs available. Yeah, I know.
I will just add and support what you rightly said. See, the part of keeping the nuclear core or the has to be with the department or the government because
today,
even
because of the law.
No,
tomorrow in America everything is in private hands.
Sir, let me finish. Because even today the nuclear fuel whether it is fresh or in the reactor or reprocessed, belongs to the department, not to NPCIL. Because it is a strategy.
No, that is going on. That for that change only the present discussions are going on with IAE. Yeah, correct. That's exactly the point which is being discussed.
So
Yeah.
may I say something? Yeah, this particular part about there is a nuclear island and a balance of plant. It's called.
Yeah.
So the balance of plant can be managed theoretically by any
Outside.
private sector. The nuclear island has to be controlled. Having said that, again you are back to square of what is that radius. Okay, if this balance of plant is far away from the core,
No.
precisely. So now you come to the radius of operation. The practical issue is that if there is a nuclear power plant and the balance of plant right next to it, that entire radius is to be covered is one single area. The liability clause, which is what, okay, I will tell you, sorry.
The steam has to be carried to the turbines.
No, it can be changed, but then it becomes uneconomical. See, you have a plant here,
And a steam generator far away.
and then so
No.
there is a practical issue here. Why it has not been done? Now, the second part is liability, nuclear liability. Nuclear liability is a single case where I personally have spent about 4 years in talking about only nuclear liability. So I know exactly where the problems were. Having said that, what I'm trying to say, why are we know these problems, why are we ignoring them? What we can do is, in that plant you have as many reactors as possible. Have that, because that should be the approach.
SMR is lost.
Why? No. Why do you say that?
Yeah.
How I did not say same design of 700 megawatt.
And
A completely modular design of 700 megawatt, which is farmed out to industry on a mass scale. And it is not as if you are talking about large numbers of the existing design. I again and again saying the existing design needs to be modularized. Have the modularized design of a 700 megawatt or a 220 megawatt, whichever you are comfortable with. Involve a lot of industries. We will come out with solutions which will solve the problem, but will not enter into the major area again. That okay, how do you handle safeguards? How do you handle nuclear fuel? Every gram of who's accounting? This is a problem which no country has been able to solve. So please understand that what I am saying is not throwing out the concept modular. Don't make it a distributed system. Make it a modular system designed to reduce the total cost and time for a given reactor. That's all I'm saying.
No, I just have a point here.
You know, when you said the main island and then the perimeter sort of safety, why don't we look at the concepts that we use on our submarines and our aircraft carriers, which third one probably may go that way, wherein these sort of zones as such are not there. So we'd have to look at a concept which is being used on the maritime thing and avoid this whole thing that you're talking about, these, perimeters.
Okay, so that is what Russia has found a solution.
Correct.
Leave the maritime on the maritime, let it be a barge, which can be modular, you can have it. Because see, what happens in a military zone and how that is controlled, because since I've worked on both, I know what the difference is, why they allow, for example, a nuclear submarine contains, let us say 80 megawatt or whatever is source there. Now, if you take an 80 megawatt and put it on land, huge problem will come. You use the same thing in the environment, either in a submarine or a marine environment or a military environment, it works beautifully. Therefore, if you want to make best use, that is why Russia has come out with this concept. They have not put the reactor onto land.
It's on a barge at 10 miles.
Now the barge has got its own security parameters. You have your own methods of how you guard that particular thing. So you have that approach. Have numbers of them. I'm not against that. Because just like you have got so many icebreakers operating today, okay, many of them are nuclear.
So with a 7,500 kilometer coastline,
Yes, you can have
this is
several.
where the deployments could happen to begin with.
Guarded
to
by the
begin
Navy
with.
and all those kind
And you can have undersea cables delivering whatever distributed power that you want.
that is your strength, please use it.
Yeah.
Because
So that is probably a step one, which sort of takes care of the problems of safety. And in this meantime, while all this is happening, that is where the perception change amongst the public has to be picked up.
yeah, the perception change for the public is a monster of a thing. I'm not sort of meaning anything with that. But the fact that organizations like PIC and so many others around the country and think tanks, we must concentrate on just a single point. How do you change public perception? We various fora where call people from the public, take them and with the permissions for the authorities, take them to the plants, find out the real problems, and that's where it can
Remove the secrecy.
Yes, that is where we can play a role as a responsible organization. But you can't say that, okay, now because that is so, we must have the same modular approach everywhere. It is too premature to say that. Because we'll be fooling ourselves. And coming back to design, here I have got modular design already designed by our own people, DRC. Only I have not taken the permission to show you that slide. I would have shown you the slide. We can invite him here. If he talks about it himself, it's better rather than my showing me any slide.
What level of power?
Those there are 100 megawatts.
But the other doubt I had, like you were saying this modularized 220, which you want to standardize and sort of use a PPP model to manufacture.
On the PPP, I will be concerned about.
Okay. So my point is, what the government is probably looking at today is looking at this annealed fuel, basically not getting dependency on any other country, looking at the thorium plus the non-enriched uranium. So how will this fit into what is there existing?
That is the R&D.
Sorry, small interruption. Annealed fuel has thorium, but
Unriched.
it has
Not
enriched
enriched.
uranium. Lu is high SA, low enriched uranium. That essentially we don't have in the field. But advantage is this can very well fit into a pressurized environment.
I think actually what you're saying, Anil, is I know for a fact, and I know that the company also there has been a lot of discussion on this Anil aspect and how this whole thing can be quickly done to incorporate in our design, existing design. But as you rightly put it, you get a reactor with anything more than 5%, you are having those necessary conditions. And therefore, that will take its own time. It's not as if I'm not saying Anil is an excellent idea because it gives you advantage of making your own fuel in future. Then you're not
Thorium you have.
Correct.
So that was an excellent idea, and it is going in its own way. But again, you see now, it is being developed by US laboratory. The Indian person may be there, but it is a US laboratory. He is working and he is a US citizen. He is working under US laws. And when a fuel is done, a nuclear fuel, all these attachments come to picture. It's not an Indian design.
No, it is Indian design.
No,
They are testing, no? I also know it.
No,
I also know
It
it.
is an American design being irradiated in Canada and then probably
Testing is
tested in
done.
US.
That's right. Testing is being done there.
Mehul Shah is the person who is the core manager of the company. He is an Indian certainly. He is very keen because he has worked under Dr. Thakurkar. He has named it ANEEL.
In SLS.
Yeah, because and he is keen. But the point is the testing is done by Oak Ridge Laboratory. So point all these testing is done there. And only once it is approved there will you be allowed to use it in any nuclear establishment. So yes, we have a good connection, an Indian connection, etc. And that I can assure you that it is going in a proper way. So we don't have to do much as a PIC. But in the other part, certainly we have a role to play, and that's the role I would like to don't get into the other part about how to distribute nuclear power. It will take its own time. But definitely how to modularize and drastically reduce time. As Sanjay was saying that actually the time taken for a nuclear reactor, you take the civil work. There's a mechanical work, a civil work. Civil work takes enormous time. Now so imagine Westinghouse offer a design where the entire thing is steel, modular. The Westinghouse design, which I have signed an agreement with Westinghouse for doing work in India, so I know Westinghouse as well as the Frank. The Westinghouse design, they call it AP, that is modular 1000, AP 1000. Now they have made AP 300. But the concept is very interesting. They don't say that you build everything at site. You build everything in the factory. Everything is standardized. And you take those modules there and quickly react the reactor. That is something which is manageable. You are not disturbing anything. So we can adopt similar things in our reactor. That's it.
Yeah.
Modularize our existing design. That I am fully support.
Gentlemen and friends, we have overshot our time and underestimated the amount of discussion that will come. So, with your permission, with your agreement, let me allow and let me request our chief chairman to give his comments, and then I'll request Dr. Ravi Pandit to say a few words.
I think there's not much for me to say now, because we've heard so many people giving us very contra so-called inputs. But I think the bottom line upfront now is that we need to go this way, and especially when we are looking at renewable sources and with carbon footprint reductions and things like, and with non-availability of fossil fuels in the future. So we need to look at how best we can utilize whatever is there within the country, look at how we could look at certain handshakes with somebody else, because the pool of information on the SMR is going to be increasing. There's got to be a lot of research which is going to be done world over on this, and we're going to see how best we could look at trying to gain from other people's experience to sort of, and look at how we could utilize this. Yes, there are definitely problems, there are definitely challenges, and I'm sure the policy makers are also pretty much aware of what are these challenges. And what we can take from here is, with the subject expert advice that we have got today, what we could recommend as a possible way ahead, so that we don't shelve the project, we look at ways and means of how we can push it. And it's a tough ask, but I'm sure there would be ways and means of how we could bypass this and go through and make sure, whether it is barge mounted or whether we could look at any other possible ways of how others are doing it that we could look at. So with this, I think I'll just thank everybody for their contributions. As I said, difficult task, but yes, solutions possible. And the best way I can say solutions are possible is we use these things at sea. We are sitting next to it day in and day out, and all is good. And as you were saying, public perceptions, I remember in 2015, the US aircraft carrier Nimitz had visited Chennai, and the Chennai government didn't allow it to come inside into harbor for whatever reasons. We kept her at anchorage at 25 kilometers away, basically for this. And as was rightly brought out, a reactor and a bomb are completely two different ends of the spectrum. And therefore, to say that a reactor will be a bomb and vice versa, it's just not there. But we've got to get this knowledge across to people so that they appreciate it, and that's how we would have to move ahead. But move ahead, yes. Yes on the SMR, whichever way we go, be it modular, be it the 220, be it an 80, be it micro, whatever it is. But we've got to find solutions and go ahead. Thank you.
Actually, I have nothing more to add to what Admiral Deshpande has said. I think the core issue is that, there are many energy technologies where we have been laggards. And I believe that there have to be at least some where we can lead, and this may be an area where we can lead. And in doing everything, I think two issues become important. One is how do you structure a way of doing things, and how do you manage the perception part. Managing the structure part, as Mr. Kotwal has brought out, I think it has to be a collaboration with the private sector, because that can bring speed, it can bring reduction in cost, and it can pool all the resources that we have. It can also bring in a lot of funding, for which I hear time and again that BARC or the DA have been starved. A private sector can bring in a lot more funding.
Yeah.
I think we need to bring in this private sector operation in that. I personally feel from a BRC perspective, we should come out with, may not be a very detailed note, but at least a small note which says that what are the things that can be done as our contribution to this national effort. This is a boat that we can hardly afford to miss. I must thank you all for being here.
Thank you everybody, especially our chairperson, for taking the time, coming all the way from various states. And I think this has been interesting, because before you start something, you must know the downside rather than the plus side. Being a scientist, I'm a die-hard optimist, because otherwise we cannot do anything. So thank you again, and I'll request our director PIC to please offer some gift to our speakers.